we only had 2 hits. They only had 2 hits. Both teams turned 2 double plays, which shortened innings. But David threw 93 pitches, complete game. That final out is just electric. I mean, it's really fun. Kid flew out to right field, and when he caught the ball, like, just that whole game, the tension level was so high. Fans were really good. Their team was super good. So it was really high but appropriate. And good, godly Christian guys on their side. I was talking to their head coach. He goes, yeah, I got to get home tomorrow because this friend of mine's getting ordained, and he wanted me at the ordination thing. And so we were just talking through those kinds of items, and just a lot of the coaches there are good, godly Christian men who are really trying to pour into young men. A lot of them have kids on the team, so they're coaching their own kids. And so I think their motives are good. They really want to encourage young men. These are homeschool kids, so a lot of them are Christians, not all of them. And I think on our team, a lot of them are Christians. I don't know that all of them are. But we take the opportunity to share the gospel quite a bit, and we disciple quite a bit. And so I've already started plans for the fall for our discipleship program in the fall. We're going to use the Sermon on the Mount in the fall and kind of use it as a launching pad into the gospel and walking with Christ and what that looks like. So that's our plan for the fall, is to do the Sermon on the Mount with the guys. And just it's a great opportunity to pour into young men and their families and try to be a place where, because baseball is a bad idol, and I see it in my own life. It can be a bad idol, just like music or whatever. There's all kinds of hobbies that we have, your favorite TV show, whatever it is. And to make sure that whatever it is that is a passion of yours, that there's this constant drive to make sure that Christ is the center of it, is a challenge. It's a challenge. But that can be true of church, by the way. It's kind of ironic. Even ministry at a church, the church and the ministry or whatever can even become idolatrous. You go, well, how can that happen? Because it becomes about, success, or did we get this done, or what was the outcome, and you have to constantly reset to make sure Christ is the center. I think there's a real challenge about every day of our life, is we go through a lot of actions that we want success in or whatever, and to reset and constantly be saying, okay, how is Christ being glorified here? Where's my heart? Where's my motive on this? And to kind of check ourselves on that. We get frustrated because it's not going the right way. Is this because we're justifiably frustrated, or is this because it's not going the way I want it? And the idolatry I've created in my own life is, how people think about me or what I wanted to see happen. So it's a real challenge. I think I find it in school. I find it with academics, with college students especially, that kind of thing. So. And all this is part of this overall battle we face in the world that we're in, a world of both good and goodness, but also a world that has a great deal of evil and sin in it. Extremes like what happened at Allen yesterday, incredible evil. But other more subtle evil that transcends every heart and mind, a constant motive check for each one of us. Every one of us have moments throughout our day that we're not glorifying God and we're exalting self. And so, this is related to the Revelation text, because what's happening here is this very symbolic, Richard did a great job analyzing this last week, but this very symbolic discussion about, it may be literal, it depends on, how future and all that kind of stuff, and your view, dispensationalism, all that, but ultimately it is a picture of the ultimate battle between good and evil, and the divine purposes of God to allow this battle to play itself out. God could end this battle, right? Like instantaneously, and he doesn't. But this is not the only place we see this. In the book of Exodus, there's not the need for 10 plagues. God didn't need 10 plagues to liberate the Jewish people, right? He didn't need one. He could have just whispered in Pharaoh's ear, hey, you should get those Jews together and let them go. But because he did that, by the way, with the Cyrus. He did that in the case of the Jews coming out of Medo-Persia, where he just whispered in his ear, essentially. And Nehemiah, he's all upset. He's like, what's wrong? He's like, well, here's letters, here's some money, go back and rebuild the city. And that could have been Pharaoh's response, right? And so why did God allow that? I think there's a massive battle between good and evil on display in the Exodus. There's a massive battle between the one true God and the idolatry of Egypt. I think there's a massive battle between God and the evil of the Egyptians at that time, especially the Pharaoh. And this gets played out throughout human history, that God does not just solve evil in an instant. Instead, he embraces the sacrificial death of his son for evil in order to redeem us out of it and to offer freely to the world to believe. But then we'll have this final showdown where the world won't, and it will lead to final judgment. And the God who sent his son to die on our behalf is then fully justified and ultimately bringing about this judgment, final judgment of evil. There's another text, by the way, that reminds me of this. I was thinking about all this. Like, why this? This is a very drawn-out drama, right? We have, if it's 7 years of tribulation, and whatever your view on this is, but assuming this is some kind of future event that's 7 years tribulation, or it's some past event that is 7 years of tribulation, why 7 years? Why not 7 minutes? He created the universe by speaking it into being. I think he can fix something in less than 7 years, or less than 2, 3.5 year periods. Right? We can all agree with this, right? That God, if he wanted to solve this in some other way, could do it, and it would not take him 7 years. So then it's kind of like the why question then comes about, like the why. Why allow the saints to suffer the way they did? Why allow, that we see suffering here in this case? Why allow the Antichrist to have such sway? Why allow the devil, the dragon, to have the great serpent to have such great sway on humanity? Why allow this? And this is why so this verse, God causes all things to work together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose, right? Romans 8:28. That verse is so challenging because when we read it, we'll filter the word good through our own lens. And the word my or our is not in front of the good. Like it's not, God will work all things together for my good, meaning my own definition of good. I think it is for my good. I think it is for my good. It's just, it's for my good defined by God, which changes the way that, because I was thinking about that in light of the Lazarus event today too, which is that Mary and Martha would have said, well, no, here's the script, Jesus. This is how this is going to work. And they would not have handed the script of, we're going to spend 4 days weeping over this. They were like, please intervene. Now, afterwards, I think maybe they would have said, no, it's terrible we went through that, but wow, the display of God in that. But so I think this is hard because when we read this text and we see this cosmic battle shaking up, and it's kind of tempting to say, well, why not just destroy the devil after the garden? Why not just destroy the devil after the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus? Why not just destroy the devil when he first shows up here in this Revelation text? Why not, right? And so just kind of, so here's the deal, I think, with this. This is hard for me. I want the way the universe should happen to be filtered through my own perspective. You do too. You're lying to yourself if you don't say this, if you don't agree with this. Because right? I mean, I know how I want things to go. And you know how you want things to go for you. And what's that? It may not be the way God wants it to go, but we definitely each have our own. And I'm actually cool with your worldview and mine on this too, as long as they don't intersect in some negative way, right? So my worldview would be these things always happen this way. And then it's not what God wants, obviously, or would have happened that way. So this whole idea of the sovereignty of God and watching these things unfold while seeing, So if the primary purpose of the universe is my happiness now, and then what God is supposed to be doing is making sure I'm happy all the time, I'll say he's not doing a very good job of it, because there are times I'm not happy. And if he's sovereign, he can make that happen. However, if the primary goal of God is his everlasting glory, and the display of his attributes and the joy of his people to celebrate his attributes forever and ever, then things may not work out exactly the way I'd script them. They might work out quite differently. In other words, so we get to heaven and we will see the display of God's victory over sin, death, evil, the grave, all that, and the devil, all that, on display during this massive cosmic battle that he allows to unfold. We couldn't see how great, if God ended the battle between him and Satan right outside the garden, the display of God's power, his goodness, his righteousness wouldn't be as clear. By letting this play out the way it does, he displays all these attributes with greater clarity. So I think that's what's unfolding here. And I think this is, there's a question, is this symbolic? Is this literal? I'm going to lean a little bit more towards, so I think the angels are not symbolic. I think they're real. I think the devil is real. I think the word dragon here, I don't know that it's a literal dragon. I think that may be divine language for imagery, right? I don't know that it's a literal dragon. Now, if a literal dragon shows up somewhere, I'll be like, there it is. There's the, So there's this war in heaven, and Michael and his angels waging war with the dragon. And this is very similar. I know you might have mentioned this. I think you mentioned this last week. This is similar to Daniel and the battle in the book of Daniel. You mentioned that last week. So we've had this theology of the fight taking place in the angelic realm at times. And so it says they were not strong enough, and there was no longer a place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, and the serpent of old, who was called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world, he was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And you talked a lot last week about the deceptive work of the devil and his accusatory work. I think you talked about that as well, like how he works in terms of deception, trying to deceive believers, deceiving the whole world, but also his accusatory work, those things, you brought some of those things up. And so then we find this, then I heard a loud voice in heaven, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and authority of Christ have come, for our accuser of our brethren has been thrown down, he who accuses them before God day and night. So y'all talked about that last week, this accusatory role of the devil. He's like a prosecuting attorney who seeks to destroy our character before God, this judge. Yes?
You do a lot more research than I do. One of the things when I hear that Satan is the accuser, to me, it seems like it's a laughable role, because who is he presenting it to? He's presenting it to the God of the universe, like, I can fool you with anything. So what did some of the commentaries say? Like, it doesn't even...
I don't think he's trying to fool him. No. I don't think he's trying to fool him. I think he's right. Actually, here's the deal. This is about destroying the reputation of God. If this is all about the glory of God and God's attributes on display, if you're the devil, the best way to try to go at this is to go at his attributes. And if God has followers of his that are scandalous, this damages God's character. This is about destroying the character of God. This is about the devil destroying both their confidence, the believer's confidence, but also assaulting God's character. Like, this is who you have following you. These are your people. Look, you're claiming these are your people. Look at the scandalous character of these people. I think it's kind of that kind of thing. So, and we can understand this, right? This guilt by association, almost like you're this great creator of the universe, and you're judging me, but look at the people you call your own. And that's why there's such an assault by the devil on the followers, is to destroy the followers of God and to accuse them. I think he goes at them both ways. We have the persecuting effect by unbelievers in this time period, and you have the accusatory effect of the devil in this time period. Like what you're saying, like God's fully aware of all of this, and the devil knows this. Right, like, what's he going to get out of this? There's no real gain. But I think it's more just the trying to destroy the whole salvation plan, the whole plan of God to glorify himself through his son's salvation work, to destroy the confidence of the believers he has saved, all of this kind of stuff. He's going right at the core of God's plan of glorifying himself through this work of salvation through his son. So it seems like this is the primary role of the devil. The secondary role of the devil is make this world chaos. Because God created the world with order and purpose, and it just seems like make the world chaos. But the second thing is God's plan of creation, God's plan of redemption. The major plan of the creation is redemption, right? So then he goes at that level. So the two things you would expect the devil to assault is the created order where God is glorified to make it chaos to where God is not glorified. And the second thing is God's salvation plan of redeeming lost people to go at that core plan by destroying their confidence, by accusing God about them. I think that's what's going on. So there's this cosmic battle. And God's answer to that is, my son died for them to pay for their sins. It's a sufficient price, so you shut up, kind of thing, to the devil. You don't have a prosecutory leg to stand on here. So and you talked about this last week. Remember, Peter even says, the adversary is like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. The adversary there is like this prosecuting attorney, accusatory role that the devil plays. And Simon Peter even warns, hey, be careful. The adversary, the accuser, is like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. In other words, don't give him access to you by doing things that will draw you into his trap. And so just a warning that the devil seeks to devour, seeks to destroy. His whole thing is to destroy the plan and work of God. God's plan is for you to glorify him by following his son, believing in his son, following after him, living a righteous life. And the devil's like, everything of that I can destroy, I'm going to try to destroy. That's why we've got to be super careful, every one of us. Every one of us. The adversary would like to destroy you. And every potential temptation we got to deal with seriously. And so, yeah. Verse 11, they overcame because of the blood of the Lamb, because of the word of the testimony, and they did not love their life even when faced with death. So this is text about how these believers were able to overcome. And and for this reason, rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, knowing that he has only a short time. So there we go. So that's the text y'all did last week. So now I want to talk through the next text, which is verse 13, 14. They're all connected. By the way, this runs all the way through 13. The theme runs all the way through 13. It says, when the dragon saw that he was thrown down to earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. But the two wings of a great eagle were given to the woman. So now she's got wings and she's flying. So she can fly into the wilderness to her place, where she was nourished for time, times, and half a time away from the presence of the serpent. Time, times, and half a time. It sounds like listening to Abraham Lincoln. 7 years ago. I'm like, dude, just like give us a number here. What in the world? So, no offense to Abe, but this is a little bit of Abe Lincoln talk here. Time, times, and half a time, I think, is 1 year, 2 more years, and half a year. 3.5 years, right? Time, times, and half a time. 3.5 years. We're back to this 3.5 years, 42 months, 1,260 days. I like all those kinds of things. All these markers keep showing up. So this is this 3.5 years away from the presence of the serpent. Now, this is where the 3.5 years has already shown up several times. And so some people are like, are these running concurrently with each other? Which is possible. Like this is part of that 3.5 year time period. All these things are going on in that 3.5 year time period. Or is this running chronologically to each other? The problem is, I think you get into some of these are going to have to be concurrent because there's another 3.5 years still going to happen. So my suspicion is this is running concurrent with the prior 3.5 years. But there's a lot of discussion about this. Like, where is this 3.5 year time period coming? Is this after the midpoint break or before? Is it concurrent with that? All those kinds of things. And so, but I wanted to mention when I first came pastor, Matthew Road, I was talking about the adversarial role one Sunday. I was talking about the adversarial role of the devil, how he accuses us before God, and that Jesus, as our great high priest, advocates for us. And I had a church member, longtime church member, died since then, but he said to me, came to me after the sermon, he goes, the devil doesn't accuse us anymore before God. I said, oh, why do you think that? He says, because the devil's already been cast down. and he used this verse. Now when 72 returned with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. And he said to them, I watched Satan fall from heaven like lightning. And this gentleman said to me, see, he's been cast out of heaven. The problem with that is I think this is poetic language from Jesus, not talking about the devil being cast down, but more like as you guys were ministering, I watched his powerful position, this elevated position of Lord of this world kind of thing. I watched him lose that power. So I don't think this is a literal, the devil got cast down in this moment while the disciples were doing. That'd be weird anyway. Like God waited to cast the devil out to where the disciples went out in pairs of twos and then went, now's my time. This is the cataclysmic moment to cast the devil out of heaven. That just doesn't seem right to me. Yes?
I don't know. I guess the way I've always thought of it, maybe I'm wrong, is that whole reference talks about a prehistory battle where Satan had an equal domain in heaven, and now he's the ruler of this earth. And when he says cast down, it's like, okay, here's his playground here now, and that's kind of what it refers to. So his argument, I guess it's a loose inference off of, oh, if you're cast down, you can't stand before God.
Right. If you're cast down, you can't make... Because the whole thing was the Job reference, right? Where Job comes before God, and Satan comes before God, and he's accusing God, which is where, this is where you said, like, what is his goal? Is ultimately the accusing of God is not of Job, but of God. You protected him, right? The accusing of God with references to us is like, these are your people. Look at the silly things they do. Like, look at the simple things they do. So the accusation is against us, but in some ways it's like a backdoor way of accusing God himself, right? So it's like, the kid makes a mistake and people are like, boy, that kid had a terrible choice. Must be something in that home. It's that kind of thing. Like, blame the parents. There's a little bit of that going on with God's children. Like, you look at, and we see this in the New Testament where we're told, be imitators of God, things like that, as beloved children. Be imitators of God as beloved children. So the devil's accusation is in that realm. But I agree with you. Like I don't, just because he's been cast down from this lofty throne. By the way, the cast down also is very similar to the language that he brought angels with him when he was cast down into this realm. He's the God of this world. The Bible describes him as that, right? The God of this world. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 3. The God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelieving. That's 2 Corinthians 5. 4. The God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelieving. Ephesians 2, 3 is according to the prince of the power of the air. Sorry, it's hard unless I'm quoting the whole thing. You were dead in your trespasses and sins in which you formerly walked, according to the course of this world, so according to the prince of the power of the air, I think is the reference in Ephesians 2:2. And so that's kind of a demonic reference as well. So I think that the devil, but then the question is, like, if he's cast down, is he still going up before God to accuse God about Job? And does he still go before God today and accuse us before God today over over these kinds of things? And does this, I saw Satan fall like lightning, means that he's now banished here and can't ever make his accusation before the Father? I don't know, because 1 Peter 5:8 is like, our adversary, our prosecuting attorney, seeks to devour you. He's like a roaring lion seeking to devour you, so you have to be careful. So I think these all work together in that your statement, the devil, this is his domain, the God of this world, but he has the ability somehow to make his case before God. If it's like Job, he's literally coming before God, or something else, then maybe that's more symbolic, that he makes accusation before God on our behalf, or against us. And so we have the Job text. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, where do you come from? And he answered, from roaming about the earth and walking. He says, have you found my servant Job? For there is no one like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, fearing God and turning away from evil. And Satan answered the Lord, does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a fence around him and his house and all that he has? So this is accusation. And the accusation is ultimately against God himself, not against Job. Like, Job's righteous because this is like Adam in the garden. The accusation wasn't against Eve. Adam's fall, his blaming there was not against Eve. He says, he doesn't say the woman. What does he say? The woman you gave me. So even he imitates the devil in this moment. He blames God for this. If you hadn't given me that woman, this wouldn't have gone south like that. It's like, dude, take some responsibility here. And so this is kind of the role of the devil, is this deflect onto God's character the attributes of his followers. So let's see. All right, so here's this 1 Peter 5. Be sober, be of sober spirit, be on the alert. Your adversary, that word adversary is like a prosecuting attorney, accuser. I think some translations actually put the word accuser in this text. Your accuser, your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. All right, so now back to our text in Revelation. So the dragon saw. Now the dragon is representative of the devil, and we see this because later on in this text, this dragon is referred to explicitly as the devil. Right. Yeah. It's explicit. So we're not speculating on that. So the dragon saw the great serpent, the dragon, right? And so we have this deal where this woman, remember we talked about this woman is portrayed in Mary in the birth of Jesus. We also see this woman portrayed as the nation of Israel and giving birth to Messiah, the first coming. We also see it, though, as some have said this woman now represents the church, and that's the protection. Some have said it's the second rise of Israel, and this again depends on your worldview. If you're a strong dispensationalist, what you'd say is this woman represents the new Israel who is going to re-covenant with God, build a new temple, and she's going to give birth now not to a baby like Jesus, but give birth to the messianic reign of Jesus. And so the devil's deal is, I'm going to stop that messianic reign, which will lead to my demise, by going after the woman, which was Israel. That's how some people have interpreted this. I think, Richard, didn't you have this text, or did I?
You had the verse, but we went over that.
Yeah. Okay. So, or some, including Osborne, I think, holds that this woman represents the church, and is out of the church that this kingdom is going to be born into the world. And in the way that Mary gave birth to Jesus, that ushered in this whole salvation plan, now you have the church, through their faithfulness and trials and persecution in the face of the devil, is going to usher in the second coming of Jesus and the everlasting kingdom. So that's Osborne's take. So if you're a strong dispensationalist, you say, no, the woman is Israel, and this is Israel reinstated. Romans 11, grafted back in, and rebuilding the temple, and all these kind of things. So some people hold that view. Some people say, no, it's the church. The church is the new Israel. It's replacement theology. You've heard this term, replacement theology, where the church is Israel. There's a bit of case that can be made for that. Simon Peter refers to the church as, you are a new nation, a holy people, a royal priesthood. So some people have used that text to say, see, this replacement theology is now, the church is now Israel. I get a little nervous about that, because what happens is people in the church will then read back into prophecies about Israel and put themselves into it and say, see, these are our promises, and I think that's a leap. I do think there's a way in which the church is Israel in this, and that we're people of faith like Abraham, and we're now set apart by God, holy to him, those kinds of things. But that doesn't mean that Israel as a historical group would be dismissed from this discussion. The fact that the church is in this role of a relationship with God that's covenantal and is walking with him doesn't mean, well, then Israel can never be part of the story again. I think that's the problem with the replacement theology. They replace so strongly, it's like, no, the church is the new Israel, and Israel can never be back in a place of prominence here. I don't buy that. I think Israel may have a place to play here in end time stuff. And so, yeah, that's my view. Again, it's this controversial stuff. These people argue over this. And it's also future, so it's hard to know for sure. But I do think Israel is likely to play a role in future events. 1948, when they show back up in the Promised Land, I think it's pretty shocking. 1900 years gone as a nation, they show back up. That's pretty shocking stuff. That doesn't mean that all this stuff definitely has to do with Israel and all that. To me, though, it was a moment where I went, okay, that's interesting. And then when they take over Jerusalem in 67 or whatever, I think a lot of people went, whoa, that's crazy. No one could have seen that coming. I mean, they went from the absolute almost annihilation in Europe in 1942 or 43, 44 to now their own nation to control the city of Jerusalem. And that's pretty surprising stuff. And so it's logical that some people would take pause and go, maybe that's something. And I agree. Maybe it's something. I just want to be careful by going, look, there's a lot of people, like I can point you to some of the theologians who go, well, this is this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And I just go, maybe. If it is, I think we'll know it. But as it stands right now, we watch and pray. And so I had church members, by the way, who complained that I wasn't preaching end time stuff enough. And the reason they did is they were convinced end time stuff was happening. And I wasn't preparing the church for it. To which I said, well, I'm preaching through the Sermon on the Mount. And I suspect the Sermon on the Mount will work whether it's the end times or not. Right? I mean, like, this is how you give, this is how you pray, this is how you treat your neighbor. Blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn. Like, feels like to me that even if you're in the last 7 years, that those things still work. And you don't need some magic crystal ball where you can go, well, now I've figured all the events out. Yeah, but if you don't love your neighbor, who cares? Like, if you're not humble before God, if we're not weeping over our sin, if we're not trying to be peacemakers between, other believers and stuff, who cares? If you have all of the end time prophecy you got in your house, like you have a whole wall committed to this comes here, and then this, and then this, and this is Russia here, and this is the Ukraine here, and this event will happen here. If you have all that figured out, but you don't love your neighbor, it doesn't matter. You might as well paint that over and just, paint it in a nice baby blue. It'll look nice in the house because it'd be more useful than you having all the charts figured out, right? And so I will say with all these things, I don't know for sure. To me, it feels like Israel is probably the woman here, and that Israel's role in these final 7 years is probably what's being depicted here, and that the devil is trying to stop Israel's return into covenant relationship with God is part of those last events. That's how it feels to me. However, for those who say, no, I think it's the church and the church's role in those last events, I say that's a good option too. But it does feel future to me, and it does feel like, it does feel future to me in some kind of divine protection here. But if you're a preterist, not hyper-preterist, if you're a hyper-preterist, we have a problem. But if you're a preterist, I get it. R.C. Sproul's a preterist. So I understand. Very good theologian. So. All right, questions? Comments? So if you were going to take this class in hopes that I would give you definitive answers on what all these symbols mean, not going to happen. We're going to talk through the text. We'll have a discussion about it. I'll tell you the theories. I'll tell you kind of where I lean on it. But I'm just going to tell you it's hard. This material is hard. And so that's why, you have to work through it. We all have to be humble before it. Humility is not one of my gifts. I need more of it. And but the book of Revelation is a great study if you want to increase your humility. Study this for a while, you're like, boy, this stuff's hard, right? And so when you encounter hard things, humility is one of the results. And so this is hard. So what I think is going on here, we have the devil coming after. I think it's Israel. I think the delivery of the child is similar to Mary's birth of Jesus and the way the devil went after that situation. Now yet future, instead of the birth of a child, is now the birth of messianic kingdom. The way Mary birthed Jesus, now Israel will birth this messianic kingdom that will come and usher in an everlasting kingdom. Okay, so NASB is assuming that the male child refers to Jesus. I think it does, but it's just, I don't think it's baby Jesus. I think this is messianic reign of Jesus. The child here is, unto us a child is born, a son is given, and the government will rest on his shoulders. I think it's that kind of allusion. All right. Anything else? Question-wise? All right, so verses 15 and 16, the serpent hurled water like a river. This is, I don't know. Hurled water like a river out of his mouth after the woman, so that he might cause her to be swept away with the flood. But the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and drank the water which the dragon had hurled out of his mouth. I've heard all kinds of speculation on this. First of all, the city of Jerusalem sits on a fault line. And so some people have said, this is real water, and Jerusalem's going to have this earthquake, and it's going to swallow up this huge flood of water. Oh, okay. I mean, maybe. But there's so much symbolism here that makes it hard, right? Right, yeah. So the flood idea, to me, strikes more like the flood of persecution and trouble to destroy, and somehow God uses creation to protect the woman, if it's Israel or the church, from this assault by the devil. I think it's symbolic. But if you think it's a literal flood of water and the earth is literally going to open up and swallow this water so that the woman is protected, I won't argue with you. I just lean more towards the symbolic. Yes?
I'm very much with you that it's sort of symbolism, like just the torrent of hatred and lies and propaganda. But with that, then what likely might be the symbol of the earth? In biblical terms, is the earth a common symbol for some kind of virtue?
No, I think it's more that God will allow the creation itself to protect his people somehow. I think more that. I don't know what that means exactly. I'm just speculating, but it strikes me more as the creation that God made will do its work in honoring God by protecting his people or something along those lines. I know that's vague. I'm being vague because I think it's so symbolic that vagary may be to our benefit at this point. What's that? Yeah. It's kind of animating the creation as somehow protecting the people of God here. How, I don't know exactly. It's such a broad statement, and it's for 3.5 years too. So I think that's the other thing. I don't think it's 3.5 literal flood, and for 3.5 years the earth opens up and then closes back up. I think it's more just there's this huge period of time of the assault, the flood of hatred, like you said. I think that's right, spew of hatred and evil. And over that time period, somehow the people of God are protected, and God uses his creation to do it. And so I don't know the exact what that looks like in terms of the mechanism of it, but I think that's kind of the idea. And so then verse 17 says, so the dragon was enraged with the woman and went off to make war with the rest of her children, So again, this is where some people are like, if it's the church, who is the rest of the children? If it's Israel, is the rest of the children the church? That's what some people have held. And I could see that. Like if this is Israel and it's like, I'm going to destroy Israel, and then Israel's not destroyed, protected, and so that the devil goes, all right, I'm going after all her children, which would be, Father Abraham, as many sons. You know the song. Right arm, left arm, right. The song you sing at VBS to keep kids active. And so, Father Abraham, many sons. I'm one of them, so are you. So let's just praise the Lord. Right arm. Those lyrics, they just flow. They just flow. Like the poetry there from deep, the chorus, right arm, left arm. nod your head. Yeah, I mean, the chorus there, the lyrical structures of that song, it's overwhelming. I mean, I don't know. The rest of the church who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. This strikes me as the church. And it strikes me as the devil goes after Israel, unable to destroy Israel, now going to go after the church at large. And we're going to see this mass persecution of the church at large. And the way that persecution is going to be set up, I think, will be loyalty to the Antichrist or you die. Loyalty to the Antichrist or you starve. And that's how he's going to go after the rest. So he goes after Israel, doesn't work. Now go after the children of the offspring of that whole work. That's why when it says hold to the testimony of Jesus, I think that's what we're talking about, is the church. And the way he will go after them, the flood, as you said, of hatred and all that, we're going to find this whole setup system to where you either participate in the way we do things or you die. And many people have pointed to the Roman government, the libellas, and the requirement to pay loyalty to the emperor and all those kinds of things as being very similar to this kind of language, which John can't be using that because libellas don't come about until end of 2nd, early 3rd century before it becomes really a popular thing. Really 3rd century before they had to have a libella, a little printed out piece of paper that showed you had paid loyalty. You'd worshiped the emperor and paid your loyalty. And it sounds very much like this language as you continue to move through this text, which is why the early church said, we're living in the end times. I mean, they could just, like, so much persecution was happening, and you had so many direct lines of sight to some of this text that the early church felt like it happened in their lifetime. But they weren't the only ones. Martin Luther thought it happened in his lifetime too. So, yeah. It's probably not a good idea to put the Pope inscribed as a picture as the dragon in your Bible. But when Luther published the Septembri Bible, in the book of Revelation, Leo X is the beast coming out of the sea in the picture on the page opposite this text. So clearly Martin Luther saw these events happening during his lifetime. I think he's wrong about that. But and Leo did not invite him over to Christmas dinner after this. Yes?
I mean, historically, wasn't that more like his political cartoon? Like, you're probably not the beast, but boy, you're good.
Political cartoons? No, I don't think so. Political cartoons weren't a thing. Remember, the Gutenberg Press had just come out, and he put it in the Bible. No, he is theologically, this is no different than Scofield putting notes below the margin of his Bible. No, it is Martin Luther's theology. It's not caricature. That's his theology, yeah.
Wrong, but he's right. Kind of like a type. An antichrist.
Yeah, if Luther had meant it typologically, I would concur with you. I don't think Luther meant it typologically. Yeah, but this is always the case when really heightened church events happen. It's not uncommon for the church. We saw this in the First Great Awakening, the Second Great Awakening, where people start seeing themselves in this revelation thing. We see this when Israel in 1948 took over. There's immediately, like 1948, is like immediately connecting dots. And connecting dots not like typological dots, like, no, this is it. And so I think that's more, I agree with what you're saying. Luther didn't view it that way, though. And so there's a great book, Here I Stand, Roland Bainton. And I have the original publication of this. My wife found a used book. Got it for my birthday. It's published in the 1950s, so I've got the original publication. And that inscription of Leo from the September Bible is in that book. And it's great. I mean, historically, it's a bad idea by Luther. And if I were giving him advice, I'd say, not that he listened to me, because I spoke English, he spoke German. It had been a weird conversation. But anyway, so I would have told him, hey, dude, this is a wrong play here. I don't think this is the right play. If you're going to make a picture that you want to inscribe somewhere in the book of Revelation, find something else and don't put Leo the 10th on the name tag of the beast. That's a bad idea. Leo the 10th's name is on the beast. So, I mean, that's just a bad play. So, yeah. Yeah, well, yeah. Of course, Roland Bainton said, Leo X wouldn't have understood any of this stuff anyway. He was indulgent as a Persian cat, is what he said about Leo X. Yeah, he didn't want to talk theology. He had a bunch of money and a lap of luxury, and he didn't care about any of this theology. And so when this all came up, Leo X was the wrong person to be pope, to even have a conversation about it. He didn't understand anything Luther was saying. He didn't care about it. It wasn't his deal. He bought the position to begin with, and he didn't care about any of this stuff. So Leo X he wasn't the Antichrist. He didn't have enough theology to be the Antichrist. He didn't know the real Christ, to let alone have a figure of what the Antichrist was. Leo X was a complete theological midget. He had no idea what was going on. And so, yeah. So anyway, indulgent as a Persian cat. That's one of my favorite lines from Roland Bainton's book about Leo X. You care about theology? Bring me a steak. What are we doing? I need a glass of wine and some steak right now. That's what I need. I need some new threads. These clothes aren't going to cut it. Like, that was his whole life. So when Luther starts talking about justification by faith, Leo X's like, is that a order on the menu? What is that? We ordering that? Sounds like a new steak. Justification by faith. I don't know. Justification steak. Bring that out. That sounds good. T-bone or something. So, yeah. All right, well, this is a good stopping place. We'll pick up in chapter 13. This theme continues into 13. So we'll do a little bit of 12 into 13 next week. This is the last verse of 12, and we'll kind of bridge into it and see then what does the enraged dragon do when he goes off to make war with these other people. And that's what we're going to see in chapter 13, is the rage from the dragon. All right, let's pray. God, you are gracious and kind. Thank you for your mercy every day. We love you. We love you because you first loved us and gave your son for us. Help us to walk by faith daily and to trust you in all things. Amen. All right. Thanks for being here.